So before we get into this, what I want to do is the reason that we're going to cover this is because what you won't get elsewhere is probably kind of the reasoning as to why China's doing what it's doing.
Yeah.
Currently, just a real quick synopsis before we dive into it. The Chinese government wants to brag now about how many cases it has. It's a government initiative right now to say, yes, we are getting upwards of 30 million plus cases per day.
Yeah.
They're bragging about that at a state level to the people, while simultaneously saying, but there's only a handful of people dead.
Yeah.
You know, in Beijing, they've claimed 7, right? There's an initiative right now to make people not report things. They've changed the definition of what it means to be a COVID death.
Yeah.
And it's chaos. It's absolute chaos.
You know, here's the interesting thing that I've found is that before they ripped the Band-Aid off, the government's stance was, we cannot abandon zero COVID, otherwise, you know, millions of people will die. That was their whole thing. Yeah. And all the foreign shills and all the propagandists were towing the same line. They were like, if we get rid of zero COVID, millions of people are going to die.
And in the next 6 months, 1 million Chinese citizens will die.
Because the government initiative said we will never abandon zero COVID.
But that's what I'm saying.
Right.
Now that they ripped the Band-Aid off, which was the wrong thing to do, rather than like slowly and making sure, look, they've had 3 years to get the elderly people vaccinated. Those are the people that are dying.
And to slowly roll something out of opening up.
Yeah, exactly. They've had 3 years, more than 3 years to do it, and they didn't. They just kind of put the lockdowns in place and they stuck with it, and then they just let it go. They just abandoned it, right? So there's a big mistake on their part, rather than doing it responsibly, you know? Anyway, now that we're seeing them lift off the restrictions, we actually are seeing a lot of deaths, okay? And it's probably going to come true that 1 million plus people are going to die. But now the state is saying, no, we've got very few deaths, and so are the propagandists. And this is the annoying part, right? Say you are a Chinese state propagandist, okay, and you're just one of those guys, a shill, and you're like, millions of people are going to die, or 1 million people are going to die, or whatever. Why not stick to your guns?
Yeah.
Why do you always have to follow the Chinese government like a freaking puppy dog?
One day you say, no, we can't do this. 1 million Chinese people are going to die. You're evil if you say that China should lift zero COVID. The next day they lift it. All these people start dying. And then they go, no, they're not dying. It was good that they lifted it.
And the government has realized that it's not dangerous. So we've
leave it to the experts.
Yeah, exactly. So we've seen a flip-flop on, of course, the Chinese government and, of course, all of its supporters. And this, for everyone, should be a clear indication as to where these people's loyalties lie. And it also should be a clear indication as to the truth doesn't matter in China.
No.
It doesn't. No. The only thing that matters is the government narrative.
Yes.
So let's go through a couple of things, okay? So start us over here.
This is a very, very, very conservative estimate here.
Yeah.
China's likely seeing 1 million COVID cases per day, right? 5,000 deaths per day. Now, I just want you guys to have some perspective. Beijing is saying 7 total. 7 total, okay? 7 total, whereas real figures are showing at least about 5,000 deaths per day. The crematoriums are full.
Yep.
The hospitals are pouring out into the parking lot. There's no medicine left, and it's absolute chaos.
Yeah. No, it is. Let's go through it a little bit. Now, remember, this is a very good example because when the whole pandemic started, it was the same. Yeah. Remember? Yeah. If you look at the graphs, there's like a couple of deaths and then it suddenly flatlines. Yeah. Remember?
Yeah, it's a joke.
It's an absolute joke. They were like, no, people aren't dying. But we remember the reports from back then. The crematoriums going 24/7. Yep. And you could see it because of thermal cameras and stuff. It really was happening.
These days it's hard to lie.
Yeah, all of those funeral pots and stuff and all of the things. I mean, there was proof. All the like millions of people's cell phone subscriptions that weren't renewed, for instance. It was pretty obvious that they were experiencing a lot of deaths. Yeah. Okay, but they didn't report them. Right. And they reported them as something else. Or died of pneumonia or died of complications or whatever else. It's not COVID related is what they were saying. But obviously it was.
Sure.
So they've just gone back to that playbook.
Yeah.
Okay, now what you see here is some footage from a crematorium where they don't have enough space for, you know, to store the bodies. They just got them lying on the floor here.
Yeah.
And this is one of many of these clips that we've seen coming out of China. Now, CNN did a very good piece on it this morning. So we thought we'd go through it with you guys. We don't normally, rely on mainstream media, but it was good.
It was better than what we saw. It was great.
Yeah, it's a very good piece. So let's take a quick look at this. And like I said, we'll go through it together.
Can't go fast enough.
The smoke behind me, it's been billowing constant.
By the way, she does great work. She's a journalist in Beijing. And she's often the target of all the shills and so on and so forth. But
she's very good journalist.
Very good on the ground journalist in Beijing. So let's see what's going on.
From all the bodies that are burning, and these crates over here, they're all full of yellow body bags.
Workers later opened those metal containers here at a major Beijing crematorium, revealing rows of body bags as they load more coffins in the freezing cold temperatures. Crematoriums in major cities are swamped as COVID sweeps through the country, but China has only reported a small handful of COVID deaths since reopening late last month.
I spoke to a man earlier who said that his close friend passed away from a fever. Normally the hospital would hold the body, but the hospital told him that there were too many dead bodies. He said he's been waiting here for hours and he still has no idea if his friend's body can even get cremated today. There is a long line of cars that snakes around this whole area waiting to get into that cremation area. I'm in the parking lot right now and it's completely full of cars. I'm speaking here because there are many, many security guards patrolling this entire area.
Grieving family members clutch photos of the deceased. Some tell us off camera they know their loved ones died from COVID and have waited for more than a day for cremation. Busy shops nearby sell funerary items with paper money, clothes, houses, and animals used in burial traditions strewn on the side of the road.
I just want to say, juxtaposition here. When Beijing is claiming 7 deaths and CNN gets a journalist to go rogue inside of one place. And we're talking about the whole country that's getting COVID right now, right? Tons of vulnerable people without immunities, without vaccination, plus no access to the Western, mRNA vaccinations.
The one that works.
Xi Jinping said, no, we won't have that.
Isn't that...
He didn't care about his own people.
No, of course not. They pushed the Sinovac, which was, a
Vastly
little
inferior.
bit... It was slightly effective against the first strain, but not Omicron. It's like completely useless.
Almost,
it's like, may as well just drink water.
You need 3 doses to have any effect, pretty much. Anyway, that aside... I just want people to understand that when Beijing is claiming there's been 7 deaths and CNN goes to one little crematorium and it's overflowed. Yeah. You imagine, you got to think about 1.4 billion people scale at that moment. Sure. Scale that up, right? Think about that.
Yeah, and also apparently there's moderate rain in Boston, Massachusetts.
You gotta watch out for that moderate rain. Yeah, exactly. We have moderate cold. It's like 14 degrees out right now, Fahrenheit.
Anyway, what's kind of clever is the fact that they have interviewed people that sell funerary items, because that's a good indicator as to what's going on, right?
Yeah.
So
a woman who sells flowers.
I think, hold on. That's one thing I wanted to point out. We looked at all the coverage. Yeah. And we have anecdotes, like videos from people sending us.
Oh, we got people sending us messages from within China that their elderly grandparents or whatever have passed away, and that like it's pretty bad. They're not allowed to report if they've got COVID. They've been told.
This is why I thought, and this is why we don't usually do this, so this is why I wanted to hone in on this Selena Wong report. Because instead of saying, okay, we couldn't get Beijing to give us official figures, what they did was very clever. They hopped around rogue style and went to places where you said they're selling funeral items. Yeah. Where they're selling like paper houses to burn, where they're going to the crematorium. So the places that are not going to be official figures, but things that indicate something weird is happening. That was good journalism.
And I was looking into it. There's been a spike in funeral services and all this kind of stuff, like a massive spike, like overnight. Yeah. And you can't explain that away with like, oh, people just getting a cold or whatever. This is absolutely linked to everybody in the entire country catching COVID all at once. Okay? Yeah. Anyway.
As she's running out of stock, a man selling urns says business has jumped. Even the convenience store in the crematorium grounds is getting busier. Normally you aren't so busy, right? I ask. The man nods and tells me that normally there's nobody here. And it's not just in Beijing. Social media video shows crowded crematoriums and funeral homes around the country. At this funeral home in Jinan, the man is saying it's going insane. Here it is packed with cars. Vans carrying bodies stretch all the way into the distance in front of this crematorium in Sijiazhuang.
This is a COVID-designated hospital in Beijing. There's been a steady stream of elderly patients in wheelchairs being led into this hospital. I spoke to a man who's been waiting outside for his elderly family member who he said is very sick with a high fever from COVID. But he said this hospital, it's running out of bed space.
I asked the worker outside of this hospital, did a lot of people die here? Yes, every day, he responds. I ask, is it all because of COVID? Yes, people with underlying conditions, he says. China is now going through the painful reopening the rest of the world has already gone through, but it's not sharing the same data. The government now says it's narrowing the definition of COVID-19 deaths only to patients who died of respiratory failure directly caused by the virus.
You see, that's actually a very important point.
Very.
So only if you die of a respiratory illness directly caused by the virus do you die. So like, let's say you have an underlying problem, like you already are a diabetic or whatever the case.
High blood pressure.
Yeah, you have something and then you get COVID and it just kills you. They're like, that's not a COVID death.
No.
Which is stupid.
Yeah.
It's kind of like someone's sick and you shoot them in the head and they're like, oh, he died of his sickness, not of a gunshot.
That's correct.
You know what I mean?
It's a good analogy.
So this is what China does to bring the numbers down, right? And this is what they were doing in the beginning of the outbreak as well.
Right.
Once again, we can catch them lying about stuff, the Chinese government.
Sure.
And it's to the detriment of everybody in China and the world.
Yeah.
Because it downplays serious problems.
Conservative estimates, again.
Yeah.
5,000 deaths per day.
Yeah.
Conservative.
Conservative, yeah.
7 total from Beijing.
Yeah.
Just got to keep drilling that home.
How is it that they can say there's only 7 deaths? We saw more body bags in this video.
Yeah.
In one container. They opened one container. There's about like 8 to 10 people in one container. And they were like containers everywhere. Yeah. And lying on the floor and stuff, but only 7 deaths. Give me a break.
We've had more than 7 reports of just people that reached out to us.
Yeah, people that we know.
That's a joke.
Yeah.
What a joke. I mean, that's like Kim Jong-il hitting 19 shots for an 18-hole course.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. No, it's ridiculous.
Who we spoke to at the crematoriums may have said their loved ones died of COVID, but their deaths and so many others won't be counted in the official tally.
So, that's the thing. It's so disingenuous.
Yeah.
How are you supposed to prevent things like this from happening? How are you supposed to analyze the data? How are you supposed to prepare if the data's wrong, if they just cannot admit? China's harped on for the longest time about like, literally laughing at the United States. Look, 1 million people died in the United States. That's why our zero COVID is so good. They laugh at that shit. They've been throwing it out there in articles. State media. That's because the United States has been honest about how many people have died, and it shows you just how serious it was.
Yeah.
And it's something that should be done by all countries, especially where the pandemic originated from in the first place.
Yes.
If they're honest, if they were honest with the amount of people that were dying right in the beginning, people would have taken this way more seriously than they did.
Yeah, for sure.
The whole world would have been like, holy shit, look at this thing ravaging China, killing so many people.
100%.
Let's shore up, let's make sure. But because they were like, a couple of people died, the rest of the world's like, it's no big deal.
Yeah.
And it ravaged the world.
It did.
It's bad, it's irresponsible.
So what was the U.S. ambassador's response?
Well, he said, all of us in U.S. Mission China express deep sympathies for those affected in China due to the spread of COVID-19. Our embassy and consular teams have also been affected. We support those suffering from the virus and those who have lost loved ones.
I'd say that's a nice state response.
That's diplomacy. Mm-hmm. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm sure he personally believes that too. It's not just a diplomatic thing.
Of course. Same as us.
Yeah, and that's something that I hope everybody understands, is that this suffering that's going on in China right now is heart-wrenching. It affects us personally because our families are in China. My mother-in-law, my father-in-law, and everybody else. My friends, they're currently under this situation, and it's awful. It's heartbreaking. And it's worrying and it's scary for a lot of people, especially elderly people. Like my wife's grandmother is vulnerable to this, and they're terrified that something's going to happen. Yeah. It's a big worry.
Yeah.
And we wish nothing but the best for the people that are currently suffering in China from this. And we just hope that this isn't as bad as we suspect it is.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, the Chinese government and Chinese state media and the pundits and the people that work for Chinese state media do not have the same compassion and feeling of goodwill towards the rest of the world, as we will find out over here. Let's first of all talk about the China Daily, okay? This is the same bedtime story bullshit
It's
state
actually
media.
part of the reason we showed that.
Yeah.
Is to get you wet your whistle a little bit. This is Chinese state media. What does it do?
Well, it is owned by the Central Propaganda Department of the Chinese Communist Party.
Oh, interesting. So it serves a very clear purpose.
That's, yeah. I mean, seriously. What does it say? You can read the editorial control. What's that
Sure.
about?
It says, scholars have described China Daily as effectively controlled by the Central Propaganda Department of the Chinese Communist Party.
Ideologically?
So it's very far away.
Yeah.
Ideologically, it tends to adopt similar perspectives to the People's Daily. According to the 2014 annual report, China Daily is formally managed by the State Council Information Office, which was formed by the Central Propaganda Department. I think you guys get the idea.
So it is just the Central Propaganda Department of China, okay? Just like all state media is the state and controlled by the state. And guys, this is the thing. Please, and this is the reason we're telling you this. When you flip open your Sunday Times or whatever newspaper that you read, and you see a little political cartoon.
Oklahoma Daily.
Yeah. And you see a little political cartoon in there, and there'll be like a cartoonist draws like, I don't know, Trump as a hobo or whatever, you know, or draws Biden as something or whatever. That you could say like, haha, that like local paper did this. No, when you see a political cartoon in China, it's not some local paper artist. It is the state. It is the propaganda department. Okay? Because the Chinese Central Propaganda Department ensures that everything that goes into that newspaper is state sanctioned.
State policy.
And it is what the state wants.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's why we're showing you this. To draw this clear line and smack the Western ideas out of your head. Because a lot of people, they will look at some of the bad actions of China and put it down to, oh, it's a private this, or it's a you know, just an artist, or it's a company this. No, it is the state. Everything that they put out is the state.
A lot of people do try to weasel out because they use a Western lens. They say, oh, it's just a political cartoon. Oh, it's just an opinion piece. No. This is the state.
It's the state.
Let's have a look at what the state did last time.
Yeah, so over the past couple of years, well,
This is
okay.
just credit.
Yeah, by the way, we got a lot of these next things you're going to see from a dude on Twitter called Whippling. Mr. Sean Haynes. Yeah. Go check him out. Okay. Anyway, let's move on. Here's what the Chinese government has been putting out. Okay, so this was in December 21st, 2020.
Yeah.
It's
like exactly a year ago.
Tough year for Santa, #Christmas, and it shows like COVID basically ravaging the West.
Yeah, that's
but
the
tasteless.
insinuation. Yeah,
It's
but
very,
this is direct state propaganda.
Yeah, it's very, very tasteless. I mean, you know, Christmas is a time of joy and giving and stuff, but they're, you know, making fun of this. Okay, so you can read this, what's going on in the China Daily one. This is also May 2020. What did they say?
It says, invitation to virus, #China Daily cartoon. So it shows an American hand, I guess Uncle Sam's hand, going back to work, flipping up from lockdown. It says, the coronavirus says, I like this one too.
Exactly.
Because it means that when they go back to work, instead of being in lockdowns, everyone's going to be infected.
Yes.
And then what is the juxtaposition over here?
Well, this is from 16th of November, 2022. The South China Morning Post, which is actually controlled by China, belongs to China now.
Yeah, in many ways.
Yeah, it's based in Hong Kong, but it's actually owned by China.
Yeah, Alibaba.
Yeah, Alibaba, which is China.
Yeah.
Says China must keep its resolve to ease COVID-19 rules and reopen the economy. It's just showing a juxtaposition, how they make fun of or they insult the West for doing something, but then they do the same thing and it's okay. Right? We got a couple more of these. Okay. This was in this year, January 2022.
Yeah.
China Daily Cartoon. Sad reality of #COVID-19 in #US. And it shows a shopping center with all of its shelves completely bare. Yeah. And it's got like little COVID-19 viruses with the Statue of Liberty's torch and stuff. You know, that kind of nonsense. Meanwhile, if you take a look at the picture on the right, I'll get us out of there. This is from this past week in China, where literally all of the shelves are being stripped bare in pharmacies, you know?
Yeah.
And I mean, here's the thing. You don't see the White House putting out a cartoon about China being like, oh, it's all stripped out and show a panda bear or something with a virus jumping up and
Crying
down on.
or something.
Yeah, you don't see that, right?
No.
That's because the Chinese state, the Chinese government is an immature child.
Yeah.
And disgusting, insulting piece of shit. He likes to laugh at other people's misfortunes. Here again, China Daily, this was in October 2020. Surrender to chaos. And you see Uncle Sam sitting there saying, we're not going to control the pandemic. And of course, the virus is running around, smashing things and, whatever.
Yeah.
And then if you take a look on the right from December 2022, this China will stop releasing comprehensive data on new COVID cases after the dropping of mandatory testing meant the numbers no longer reflected reality. So now they're doing exactly the same thing. But it's all okay as long as China does it, right? Mm-hmm. And that's the thing. No one's going to come and make a shitty political cartoon about China doing this because no one else is that petty.
Yeah.
And other people actually have compassion, other countries.
Certainly not the state.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, of course, you'll get some fringe lunatics on the far left and the far right will make shitty stuff.
Sure.
But, the White House is not putting out a press release because that's what these political cartoons in China are. It's like as if the White House released a press release.
Yeah.
It is. It's the state, right? Here we have in November 2022, so not that long ago, a China Daily cartoon. Heads in the sand while COVID beats them. And it's got like I guess a Western politician or something shouting at the screen because it sees zero COVID going on. Meanwhile, the virus is kicking his ass, type thing.
Yeah.
On the other side, it's no secret that messaging in China comes from the top. In Li Jianzhao and Hua Chunying, the CPC have 2 firebrand spokespeople and prolific tweeters. How often have they written about COVID on here this month? And then he goes to basically just show how hypocritical this whole situation is.
Burying their head in the sand.
Correct. Just burying their head in the sand. They're not talking about it at all.
What's that called? Projection, I think?
Oh, yeah. In fact, it is.
Projection!
Let's get back to this. Again, China Daily. Which strategy is more risky? And they've got the United States coexistence strategy and Uncle Sam's being overrun by the coronavirus. And on the right, zero tolerance strategy. And it shows, Chinese medical workers defeating a virus with swords and shields and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, And then on the right, China Daily. Residents in many cities, including Beijing, Guangzhou, and Chongqing, which have experienced mass infections recently, have embraced the optimization of control measures in order to bring life and work back to normal. Again, it's just hypocrisy, absolute hypocrisy. Got a couple more here. Yes or no to COVID-19? Quarantine, ICU. No quarantine, ICU as an intensive care unit. It's got like some no mask guy being thrown into the back of a van. And then we see coronavirus. China's hospitals seem to be filling up from the WHO. These are just, again, showing you. Another one from the China Daily, also from January this year. U.S. medical system under siege, and it shows the virus like a massive tsunami, like about to knock down a paper hospital. And then on the right, we say, amid crowded fever clinics, patients urged to use internet service, grassroots facilities in China. Because the Chinese medical system is currently under siege, Yeah. Again, it's horrendous. It really just shows you how insensitive and shitty the Chinese propaganda department and the Chinese state is.
Yeah.
Because you're not seeing any official US or any other country's media, like official state media. You're not seeing the BBC doing this. That's state media.
Yep.
Right? BBC's not going out there and saying like, haha, look at how many people are dying.
Remember what the Chinese state did to India? Laughing at
remember
all the deaths.
And they also did like brown face. Remember that?
They did that as well.
I mean, come on. Yep. So yeah, we're not going to read each and every one of these things out to you, but it's just so ridiculous how awful they are.
It was relentless what they did. Just being a pest. Just insect of logic, like just buzzing around people going, we don't have COVID, but you do. Bzzz,
yeah.
I mean, look, the Chinese state is disgusting.
It's just horrible. It's no diplomacy. I don't understand why the rest of the world takes China seriously, and why they even have diplomatic relations. Yeah, that's what I mean. When I say China, I mean the Chinese government. You know, when I say, oh, negotiations with the USA have broken down, I'm not like talking about USA people. I'm talking about the government, right?
Good. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Of course.
You know what I'm saying? Like when I say China makes a mistake,
I know.
I'm not saying like, oh, Mr. Chen who
I'm not
walks on the
you.
road.
I'm just throwing it out there.
Yeah, I know. It's for people who might not realize that out there. But why are people taking this government seriously? They mock people who are suffering because it serves their propaganda purposes. Why even do that?
They don't care about their own citizens, though.
I know,
they don't even let them claim their death.
No, but why mock people in your overseas media? Because China Daily is supposed to be the international...
Like, make friends.
Yeah. Let's go project it. It's kind of like if we in the United States or wherever had a Chinese language newspaper that's only for Chinese people, aimed at Chinese people living in China, and we'll start mocking them, you know, because that's all it's doing is they're just mocking the rest of the world. Yeah, it's awful.
In a vulnerable time.
Yeah.
And no one else is doing that to China.
And look now, no one's doing that to China now that the shoe's on the other foot and China's suffering badly.
Yep. It's like a replay, dude.
It's a replay.
How is anyone investing in this country? How is anyone being diplomatic with this government? If you're associated with the Chinese government, dude, I'm sorry, but you're the devil. Like, it's sick. I'm not even from a religious perspective. It's evil. It's just an evil enterprise. It's an evil government. It's bad.
Yeah, Chinese people are great. Chinese culture is great. Chinese food's great. China as a country, the actual country itself, it's great when it's not horribly like polluted and stuff by the stupid policies put in place. But it's great. The Chinese government is not great. And all these stock bros that are like, oh, it's a great time to invest in China now. Yep. What are you doing, guys? You are feeding this government. You are handing them money. You're like, hey, we're rewarding you for, you know, completely screwing over your own people.
Yeah, and the rest of the world.
Yeah. First of all, locking them down in these draconian lockdowns, which have led to mental health issues, suicides, led to people burning to death inside of buildings, led to all sorts of terrible things, destroyed the economy, destroyed people's livelihoods, destroyed people's businesses. And then, irresponsibly, just because you don't know how to do it the right way, ripping the Band-Aid off and now giving everyone COVID and tons of people are dying.
Yeah.
This is who you're giving money to.
That's where we're
and you're like, I'm rewarding that behavior by investing in you. Yeah. You stock bros out there have no morals. Greedy ass bitches. Seriously. Stop. Okay? Stop supporting the Chinese government. All right? Do you not see what you're doing? You're rewarding a serial killer at this point.
Yeah.
It's awful.
Like a pathological narcissist liar serial killer.
You're just like, oh, I like you so much. Here's some money.
And then you're like, okay, ooh, that's bad. The market's bad or whatever. You back off. And then you come back and you're like, oh, you're good again.
Yeah. Stop.
It's ridiculous. It's regarded as being bad.
It should be illegal to invest in Chinese stocks anyway.
It should be illegal to invest in China right now.
Yeah.
Under the current actions.
Seriously.
Would you invest in the Soviet Union? Would you invest in Hitler's Germany? I don't think so, right? There were evil people that were doing
Some people did, yeah.
But guess what?
History proved them bad.
Yeah, and we can learn from that, right?
Yeah.
And you go, look at those villains. They invested in Hitler's Germany. And then you go, are you investing in, China right now? Then shouldn't you be held to task? There's currently a genocide. They're currently wiping out a cultural identity. They're currently, erasing every single last bit of human rights, freedom that existed in China. Yeah. They're turning it and plunging it into a dictator pariah state. They're turning it into a massive, horrible, horrible place to be for its own people. Yeah. And then they're also trying to influence negatively the rest of the world and infiltrate your country.
And destroying the environment. And
what are we doing here?
Raping the seas.
Yeah.
Like taking all the IP, using the money that you invest in to build weapons.
I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I mean, like, are we learning from anything here? I mean, when the pandemic started, there was a lot of lessons to be learned. How China was able to mold global organizations like clay to make sure that people didn't even think it came from China.
Yeah, the WHO.
And allow it to spread, right?
Yeah.
Right? And then 3 years later, after all of these things, all the stuff was uncovered and exposés were done and scientists talked about it and everyone like came together and like, holy shit, maybe China's really, really like the government doesn't know what they're doing and they're actually pretty evil and they only serve their best interests for themselves. You'd think after 3 years of lessons, we would learn from that. But we're watching a replay of what happened right at the beginning of the pandemic happen in China again.
Dude, and in more ways than one.
Again.
Yeah, in more ways than one. Guys, Daigo. You know Daigo? Yeah. Disgusting. I can't stand Daigo. Daigo are people that basically scalpers, I guess is the best way to put it.
Sure.
You know, like you wanted to buy that PlayStation 5 for the last 2 years, but you couldn't. The PS5 is just not available because there's some douchebags who go and buy all of them. Yeah. And they go, like, they find out when it's going to be for sale or something, and they make an inside contact or whatever, and they just buy them all and hoard them and sell them for double the price. Yeah. That's a Daigo. Okay. Yeah. Now, what happens is usually you'll find Chinese students or Chinese tourists or just Chinese people living abroad. They find out what is currently really in demand in China. So anyone who's lived in Australia knows about the milk powder shortage. When I say milk powder, infant formula.
Yeah, formula. Yeah.
You know, because after the scandal in China, no one in China trusts the local milk, the infant formula anymore, right? So any Chinese person living in Australia, a good way to make money is to go into the shop, buy up all the tins, and then send them back to China. Illegally, of course, because they don't pay customs or whatever. They just ship them in the post as if it's like a normal thing. And they make tons of money because they can sell it for triple, 4 times the price, right? But this led to a situation where you would have hordes of Chinese students and like aunties and uncles waiting at like 4 a.m. in front of a shop, waiting for the door to be open so they could rush in and grab every infant formula off the store shelf so that they could go and sell it. And it meant that the local people in Australia the mothers couldn't get infant formula for their own children.
That's right.
And this was a big deal. They had to start locking them up and certain amounts per person, and they still found ways around this. Yeah. They'd stand like a chain. One would go in and they had all gangs, like infant formula gangs in Australia and elsewhere around the world, New Zealand, everywhere, because it was such a massive industry. We saw this at the beginning of the pandemic as well, when they were buying up all the N95 masks and PPE and stuff like that from Home Depot and stuff to ship back to China. And remember, we actually helped donate some to China. Okay, we sent money to a guy and so that he could distribute masks and stuff. But the problem is they take the piss and they bought it out. And this was before the pandemic hit the shores of the US. So they bought out all of the PPE and sent it back. So when it came down to like us here in the US and it was a situation where we needed to get masks for our families and stuff, we couldn't get them. Yeah. They just weren't in the shops. Yeah. Well, guess what? The same is happening now, except with flu medicines and cold medicines and things like that. Yeah. In China right now, all of the shelves, we showed you that picture earlier, all the shelves are empty in the pharmacies. Doesn't matter how mild, any kind of cold medicine or flu medicine, anything like that to deal with symptoms of COVID has been completely stripped off the shelves. Not only in China, but Hong Kong, so neighboring countries too, neighboring regions. And they're doing that now overseas too. You know Xiaohongshu, which is this app. I was going through Xiaohongshu and there's pictures of people. And luckily, and rightly so, you've got Chinese people calling them out on the app, saying like, look at these shitty Daigo. And you've got some uncles and aunties going into all the pharmacies around the US, like CVS and Walgreens and stuff, and just buying everything, putting it in a massive shopping cart, like taking them out, buying everything off the shelves. Yeah. So my advice is to anyone out there, make sure you have some cold or flu medicine in your house. Because let's just say we get hit by another wave here or there's another big strain or something, and you need that kind of fever medicine or whatever. Yeah. If you go to the pharmacy, it's not going to be there because they would have been bought up and sent to China. Yep. So just go get some for yourself. You know? I'm just saying that because we're seeing a repeat of this. I'm seeing this now daily on Xiaohongshu. Yeah, people, they're taking pictures of, the Daigo in various, Costco or all over, wherever. And they've taken every last box off of the shelf and filled their shopping carts, Yeah. So be careful of that, guys.
It's true.
Anyway, what have we got here?
Oh, this is just a screenshot that's going around WeChat right now.
You want to read the translation of that?
Sure. Let me pull it up because I didn't have time to translate it, so I'll just do it here. Okay. I got just like a quick one. Right. So this is on WeChat right now. Basically, what's going around is people are trying to deal with the whiplash of the government saying, hey, COVID is the end of the world, and then now saying, oh, it's not even bad anymore, it's just a kind of flu, and you'll be fine, you won't die, and don't worry about it, get back to work, right? Sure. So people are like, what are you talking about? This is insane, right?
Yeah.
So there is a rumor going around that says that the new coronavirus, this one that they're currently dealing with, is man-made. Okay, and it was a scenario from the United States government.
Well, look, the original one's kind of man-made anyway.
I mean, yeah, it was manipulated, right?
Manipulated in a lab in
right,
Wuhan Virology, Institute of Virology with good old...
So
Anyway.
what's in these 7 points, right, is the U.S.'s plan.
Okay.
This is spreading viral around like I and Shushu groups.
Yeah, okay, so this is kind of like middle-aged people are spreading this around, what you're seeing on the screen.
The first point of the plan is to hire cyber troops from Taiwan and other places, because they can speak Chinese, right? Mm-hmm. To vigorously promote coexistence. So, not getting rid of lockdowns.
Yeah.
And let China give up dynamic zero COVID policy. Okay, that's the first plan of the US. The second is that China will abandon the dynamic zero COVID policy and open the borders, and then Omicron will spread.
Okay.
After Omicron is spread all over the place, then they'll infiltrate and they'll spread a highly transmissible and highly lethal strain that's been prepared and put in a certain domestic transportation hub.
Okay.
So what they're saying is, because everyone will be preoccupied with Omicron, the U.S. will slip in like an actual deadly version. And why are people believing something like this? Well, because a lot of people are dying right now.
Sure.
But the government's not reporting it. So they're coming up with conspiracies.
They have to.
Number 4. The new strain will gradually overtake Omicron and will eventually become like the most the most widespread strain, kind of mutant strain in China. And the high fatality rate will completely destroy the hospital treatment system in China, right?
Yeah.
So it's basically like all the stuff that's happening, but with conspiracy on top of it, because the government won't explain it.
Yeah, right? Unfortunately, there always has to be an excuse.
Yeah. 5, continue to hire cyber soldiers to instigate themes such as buy everything from pharmacies, social disorder, and stopping factories and production, right, in China. So like spread those as rumors, right?
Right.
Name the new strain with high transmissibility and high death rate as the China mutant strain.
Okay.
That's what they'll name it.
They're going to name it the
that's
China
what they'll
mutant
name
strain? Okay.
And then exaggerate the high lethality of the Chinese mutant strain. And then they'll say that it can attach to the surface of Chinese goods, like as they ship them around.
Okay.
And they'll call on countries to block Chinese flights because it'll be transmitted
That's what they
from China.
did. Didn't they like, hang on a second. Okay, while you're dying of a coughing fit over there. Remember, they stopped all the goods coming in from certain countries because they blamed it for bringing COVID in. Frozen fish and whatever else, shoes and things like that. Remember?
Plastic lids.
Yeah, bottles and bones. These guys were blaming that and blocking it, and they were also not allowing any country to fly into China.
Yeah.
So this is, again, just like...
hypocrisy?
Super hypocritical.
So then they're going to call on countries to block Chinese flights, prohibiting the sale of Chinese products, and then goods, I should say, and then kicking China out of the international supply chain. And then 7, Chinese funds and enterprises will return to the United States, and the U.S. will achieve their goal in the trade war.
So it's just a U.S. conspiracy.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I quite like this conspiracy, other than the part about people actually dying and catching a disease or whatever. I think that this sounds nice to be able to move manufacturing out of China.
Yeah.
Because why do we have to keep putting up with all this crap? Why are politicians always bending over backwards for the CCP?
Don't talk tripe.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't talk tripe.
Why is it? It's because of, everything being made there. So stop having everything being made there, and then we don't have to put up with this shit anymore.
Yeah. That'd probably be best.
I think so. China should stand on its own merits.
Yeah.
If China wants to behave badly, then people can not take it seriously. If they want to behave well, people can take them seriously. If they want to be diplomatic, there could be diplomatic ties. Not this wolf warrior garbage where they laugh at people who are dying of COVID overseas.
No.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Anyway, just saying. But yeah, that's a stupid conspiracy.
Yeah.
Completely. And again, just to remind you, the official responses we're seeing coming out of the USA anyway, and I'm pretty sure everywhere else in the world, is that of support for the people of China and everybody who's going through a tough time there. And that's our message, hopefully your message too. Because at the end of the day, it's the Chinese government who are the assholes here, not the people of China who are suffering under that shitty government. And I know a lot of people say, well, you know, the people don't stand up, so they invite that kind of government. It's not like that.
No.
The Chinese government is this all-powerful, you know, top-down leadership thing, which if you try to stand up against it, they're so well organized at putting people down, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
It's a Herculean task.
It is. It really
And that's
is.
why it takes so much courage for anyone who stands up against the Chinese government ever. These protesters that went out there with the white papers and stuff are some of the most courageous people you'll ever meet in your life. You have no idea, because it's not like in the West, Western people are spoiled that go out there and protest. They think they're doing something special or whatever. They're not. It's like going out and eating fast food. It's something that everybody can do. There's nothing stopping you from doing it.
No.
If I want to go protest on the side of the street here with a sign, I could do it.
Yeah.
I can go to Washington, D.C. and stand on the steps with a placard that says,
Not far. We can just
you know,
literally
exactly.
drive over.
And just go there and say, like, you know, hot dogs suck and hamburgers are
whatever.
better. I could do that. Nothing's going to happen to me. At the very like the worst case scenario, the cops will be called and tell me to move on because I'm a nuisance or something.
Sure.
In China, if you go and try to protest anything, you're putting your entire future and your entire life at risk.
Yep.
You know, so
That's right.
you always have to put that into perspective.
That's true.